Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going deep into some, I don't know, kind of unsettling ideas.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about industries that might actually make money off, well, off our pain.
Hmm. That's a heavy topic.
It is, and it all started when I was listening to this podcast by Kartik Gada, and he was talking about how some businesses, some industries, get so obsessed with growing, with making more money, that, well, they end up making our problems even worse, just to keep those profits coming.
I see. So they're not just like passively benefiting from these problems. They're actually making things worse.
Yeah, that's what Gada argues. And one of the most powerful examples he gives is this idea of the military-industrial complex.
Ah, yes. The military-industrial complex. I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Well, Gada really breaks it down. It's this whole web of connections, between the military, companies that make weapons, and the government. And sometimes this whole system, it prioritizes its own growth,
Yeah.
even if it means we don't get peace.
That's a bit disturbing, isn't it?
It is, and to really understand it, we need to go back in time a bit. Gada takes us back to World War II. Before the war, the U.S. military was actually pretty small.
Really? I always thought of the U.S. as a military powerhouse.
Well, it became one because of the war, but before that, it was actually ranked like 19th in the world by some sources. Can you believe that?
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's amazing how things change. But here's the thing. After the war ended, the military stayed way bigger than it had been before.
I see. So the God is saying this wasn't just a coincidence, that there was a reason the military kept growing.
Exactly. He suggests that, some of the people who were in charge, who had gained power within the military, they had a reason to keep things this way. They benefited from a big, powerful military.
So they kept the military machine running even though the war was over.
That's what God is arguing. And then you have the Korean War. Now, it was presented as a fight against communism, which of course it was, but Gada says it also helps solidify the power of this military industrial complex. It gave them a reason to keep spending money on the military, to keep expanding it.
Ah, so it justified their existence in a way.
Right. And then came the Vietnam War, a war that went on for years and years.
Hmm.
And Gada, he makes this really unsettling argument. He says that the fact that the war dragged on, this stalemate, it actually benefited the people who were profiting from the war.
Oh, wow. So he's saying that, if a company makes more money when there's a war going on, they don't really want that war to end, even if people are dying.
Yeah, it's a disturbing thought, right? That profit motives could actually be driving decisions about war and peace.
It's a lot to process. And does Gada actually name names? Does he say who he thinks is part of this complex?
He does. He points to figures like the Bush family. He mentions John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and even Joe Biden on the Democratic side. He says they're all part of this web of interests.
Hmm. Interesting. So he's suggesting it's not just one party or the other. It's a system that transcends political divides.
Right. And he makes this point that, the military industrial complex, it used to be more associated with the Republicans, but now he says it's gained a lot of influence within the Democratic Party too, and that makes it even harder to challenge the status quo, to question the need for all this military spending.
I see. So it's become more entrenched, harder to disentangle.
Exactly. And he brings up this really interesting point about Ukraine. He says, supporting Ukraine might seem like the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, and maybe it is. But he wants us to ask, who is really benefiting from this conflict? He suggests that the average American, we might not be seeing any direct benefits, while, certain industries, certain individuals are making a lot of money.
Hmm. It makes you think, doesn't it? About the motivations behind certain actions, certain policies.
It really does. Now, before we go any further, I do want to be clear. Gate is not saying that everyone who works in the military or in defense industries is like actively trying to start wars.
Right. That would be a rather extreme view.
He's pointing to something more systemic, a tendency for powerful institutions to prioritize their own survival, their own growth, even if it means conflict, even if it means people suffer.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about how these systems can create situations where what's good for the country and what's good for those in power, they don't always align.
Exactly. And here's where Gatta's argument gets even bigger. He says this pattern, this tendency to profit from pain, it's not just limited to the military industrial complex. He sees it in other industries too. He calls them pain industries.
Pain industries. That's a powerful term. What does he mean by that?
He means industries that do well when people are struggling, when people are in need, and sometimes he says these industries actually make those problems worse.
So they're not just profiting from our pain, they're actually contributing to it.
That's what he's suggesting. And he gives some pretty compelling examples like big pharma.
Big pharma. Now, I know pharmaceuticals are important. We need them to treat diseases, but I can see how there could be some issues there.
Exactly. We all know pharmaceuticals are important,
Right.
but Gatter raises some concerns about how the industry works. He says there's this tendency to call more and more things diseases, things that maybe aren't really that harmful just so they can sell us expensive treatments.
So they're creating a need in a way where maybe there wasn't one before.
Yeah. Think about it. If a company can convince you that you have a problem that only their product can solve, well, they've just created a customer who might not have actually needed their product in the first place.
That's a bit sneaky, isn't it?
It is, and Gaeta brings up the COVID-19 pandemic as a big example. He says that, some pharmaceutical companies, they might have actually benefited from all the fear and uncertainty surrounding the
Look,
virus
how so?
because it increased the demand for their products, vaccines, treatments, all that stuff.
Right, right. Of course, we needed vaccines and treatments. They were essential. But I guess the question is, were all the decisions being made based on what was best for public health, or were profit motives influencing things?
That's the million-dollar question. And Gaeta, he's not afraid to ask it. And it's not just big pharma he's concerned about. He also talks about big tobacco.
Big tobacco. Oh, well, they have a long history of downplaying the risks of smoking, don't they? And of marketing their products aggressively, even to kids.
Exactly. And Gaeta says that's a classic example of an industry profiting from actually causing harm. They knew their product was addictive, that it was killing people, but they kept selling it anyway. Profits over people.
Yeah, yeah. That's a dark chapter in corporate history.
Mm.
And does Gaeta make any connections to other industries that might be doing something similar?
He does. He briefly compares big tobacco to big sugar. He says that, big sugar haven't faced the same level of scrutiny, even though too much sugar can be really bad for you too.
Right. All those sugary drinks, processed foods. It's a huge problem, especially for kids. But we don't talk about it as much as we talk about smoking, do we?
Not really. And Gada seems to be saying that big sugar might be using some of the same tactics as big tobacco. Downplaying the risks, marketing their products aggressively, even though they know those products can lead to obesity, to diabetes, to heart disease.
It's almost like they're getting away with it.
And then there's big tech. Now that's a whole other beast, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big tech. They started out as these disruptors, these forces for good, connecting people, democratizing information. But now things seem a bit different.
Gada points out that, in the beginning, big tech was seen as this positive force. But now he's worried that it's become something else, something that might be hurting competition. Buying up small companies just to shut them down, using their money and power to influence politicians.
It's like they've become the very thing they were trying to disrupt.
Yeah. He even says that some big tech companies, they might be anti-technology in a way. Like they're more interested in protecting their monopolies, controlling what we see and hear online than in actually encouraging real innovation.
That's a provocative thought. It's like they've become the gatekeepers, the new establishment.
And finally, Gaeta brings up the U.S. prison system, which is a topic with a lot of ethical issues.
Yeah, but prison system, it's a tough one to talk about.
It is. He argues that, the for-profit prison system where private companies get paid by the government to house prisoners, it creates this incentive to keep those prisons full.
Right, because if your business model depends on having people in prison,
Yeah.
then you're going to want more people to be sent to prison, even if it's not really in the best interest of society.
And Gaeta says this has led to the criminalization of things that maybe wouldn't have been considered serious crimes in the past, just because it's profitable to have more people behind bars.
That's a really disturbing thought. that
Yeah.
that we might be locking people up not because they're truly dangerous, but because someone's making money off of it.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about, isn't it? All these pain industries, these systems that Gata talks about, they're all around us. But knowing about them, being aware of them, that's the first step to maybe doing something about it.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
Right. So what are your thoughts on all of this? What do you make of Gata's arguments?
I think he raises some incredibly important points. We often assume that industries, that businesses, they operate in a way that benefits everyone. But but what Gata is saying, it challenges that assumption. It forces us to look closer, to examine these systems that shape our world and ask, are they really serving us? Or are they just serving a select few?
Yeah, it's like he's pulling back the curtain and showing us how things really work, and it's not always pretty.
No, no, it's not. But at least we're starting to see it, and that's the first step to maybe changing it.
I agree. Now, I do have to ask, I mean, aren't there laws and regulations in place to prevent these industries from going too far, from doing too much harm?
Well, there are, of course, but the question is, are they enough? And are they being enforced? I mean, Gada's argument suggests that maybe they're not. We have to remember that, the people who make these regulations, they're often influenced by the very industries they're supposed to be regulating.
Right, right. It's like the fox guarding the hen house.
Exactly. So there's always the possibility of loopholes, of conflicts of interest, of the balance of power tipping in favor of those with the most money, the most influence.
So it sounds like Gada is calling for a deeper awareness of all this, right? He wants us to be more critical thinkers, to question the information we're given, to be more careful about which industries we support with our money.
I think that's exactly right. He's encouraging us to be more informed consumers, more engaged citizens, more active participants in shaping the systems that govern our lives. He's not just pointing fingers and complaining. He's offering a call to action.
And you know what? That's what makes this deep dive so important. It's not just about feeling bad, or getting overwhelmed by how messed up things are. It's about empowering ourselves to make better choices, to demand better from the industries that have such a huge impact on our lives.
I completely agree. It's about taking back some control.
Yeah.
About realizing that we do have a say in how things are run.
So if we're going to take Gada's call to action seriously, where do we even begin? I mean, it all feels so big, so entrenched. What can one person really do?
That's a great question. But I think it's important to remember that even small actions, they can have a ripple effect.
Mm.
You mentioned earlier the idea of voting with our wallets.
Right.
That's a powerful tool. By choosing to support businesses that align with our values, by boycotting those that don't,
Mhm.
we can send a message. We can show these companies that we're paying attention, that we're not going to just stand by and let them get away with harming people or the planet.
Yeah, it's like a form of economic activism, right?
Right.
Putting our money where our mouths are and showing companies that we're watching.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual choices either. We can also, support organizations, initiatives that are working to hold these industries accountable. There are so many advocacy groups, investigative journalists, researchers who are dedicated to exposing wrongdoing, pushing for reforms, fighting for a more just and ethical world.
Right. And donating to these organizations, volunteering our time, or even just, sharing their message, spreading the word, that can make a real difference. And let's not forget about political action. We can contact our elected officials. We can advocate for policies that promote transparency and accountability. We can support candidates who prioritize people over corporate profits.
Absolutely. We need to make our voices heard. We need to demand that our leaders take action to address these systemic issues.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just sit back and wait for someone else to fix it. We have a responsibility to get involved, to push for change.
It sounds like Geta is encouraging us to take a more holistic approach, to recognize that these issues are all connected and that addressing them requires a multifaceted strategy.
Exactly. It's not just about regulating one industry or changing one law. It's about shifting the entire system. It's about redefining our relationship with power, about reclaiming our agency as citizens.
It's about asking ourselves some really fundamental questions like, Like, what kind of world do we want to live in?
Well,
What values do we want to uphold? And what are we willing to do to make that vision a reality?
those are the questions that Gata's podcast episode sparked for me.
Hmm.
And I hope they're resonating with you too.
They definitely are. And I imagine they're resonating with our listeners as well. This has been a real eye-opener, and it's given us a lot to think about.
It certainly has.
Yeah, it is heavy stuff, right? I mean, these pain industries, they're everywhere, you know. But like you said, knowing about them, that's got to be the first step to maybe changing something.
I think so. I think Gate is right
Okay.
on the money with that. We can't fix what we don't acknowledge.
Right. But okay, let's say we know about these industries. Now what? I mean, aren't there laws, rules to keep them in check?
Yeah.
To keep them from causing too much harm?
Well, yeah, sure, there are regulations, of course, but are they enough?
Yeah.
I mean, Gata seems to be saying that maybe they're not.
So are you saying that these companies, these industries, they just find ways around the rules?
Well, it's more complicated than that. I mean, think about it. The people who write those regulations, they're often influenced by lobbyists, by the industries themselves.
Ah, I see. So it's like a revolving door, you know?
Yeah.
People go from working in these industries to working in government and then back again.
Right, right. And that creates, well, it creates the potential for conflicts of interest, for the rules to be, well, let's just say, not as strict as they could be.
So Gate is saying that we need to be more aware of these dynamics, right? To be more skeptical, to not just take things at face value.
Absolutely. We need to be informed consumers, engaged citizens. We can't just be passive, you know? We have
Mhm.
to be active participants in shaping the world we want to live in.
So what does that look like? I mean, what can we actually do? It feels like such a huge problem.
Well, like you said before, voting with our wallets, that's a big one.
Hmm.
You know, supporting businesses that align with our values, boycotting those that don't, that sends a powerful message.
Yeah, I guess it's like hitting them where it hurts, right? In their profits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we can also support organizations that are fighting for change, you know, groups that are holding these industries accountable.
Right. There are groups out there doing amazing work, investigating these industries, exposing wrongdoing, pushing for better laws and regulations.
Yeah, and donating to those groups, volunteering our time, even just spreading the word about their work, that can all make a difference.
And and we can't forget about our power as voters, right? I mean,
Right.
we can contact our elected officials, tell them what we care about, support candidates who are actually going to fight for the things we believe in.
Absolutely. We have to make our voices heard. We have to hold our leaders accountable.
It sounds like Agata is encouraging us to really rethink our relationship with these industries, with power in general.
I think so. He's challenging us to be more critical, more engaged, more willing to fight for a better world. And you know, it's not just about fighting against these pain industries. It's about building something better in their place.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about creating a system that actually works for everyone, not just for the people at the top.
Right. It was about shifting our priorities,
Yeah.
about redefining what success means. You know, is it just about profits, or is it about something more, about well-being, about sustainability, about justice?
Those are big questions, questions that we all need to be asking ourselves
Oh,
and talking about with our friends, with our families, with our communities.
I agree. These are conversations that we need to be having because ultimately it's up to us to decide what kind of world we want to live in.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm really struck by the challenge Gata presents. It can feel, I don't know, kind of overwhelming to think about these pain industries, these systems that are so deeply rooted in our lives, you know. But he offers this glimmer of hope, like we actually have the power to change things.
Yeah, I agree. He's not saying give up. It's more like wake up. We have a choice. We have
Yeah.
agency. We're not just, pawns in this game.
Right. Even small actions, they can add up. Right.
Exactly. Being more aware of what we buy, how we vote, who we support, it all matters.
So if we were to leave our listeners with one big takeaway from this deep dive, what would it be? What's the most important thing we want them to remember?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think it's this. We can't just accept things the way they are,
Hmm.
We have to be skeptical. We have to question everything.
Question the systems, question the industries, question the people in power.
All of it. Don't just take things at face value. Dig deeper. Think for yourself.
Because these systems, these industries, they were created by people, right?
Yeah.
So we can change them. It might not be easy, but it's possible.
It has to be possible.
Yeah.
If we want a world where businesses, where industries, they actually serve the common good, you know,
Yeah.
where they don't profit from hurting people, from making their lives harder.
Yeah, that's the world we all want, right? A world where things are fair, where everyone has a chance. So as we finish up this conversation about pain industries, I want to leave our listeners with this question. Is it really possible to have, profitable businesses, industries without them taking advantage of people, without them profiting from pain and suffering?
That's the question, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a tough one, a complex one, but it's one that we all need to be thinking about.
And talking about with
Yeah.
our friends, our families, everyone.
Absolutely. And don't stop there. Take action. Get involved.
Yeah.
Support the organizations, the people who are fighting for change.
Yeah, we can all make a difference, even if it's just a small one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better world.